Well, let's start, shall we? Shall we?
So what happens?
It's official. I don't really know because I mean I think this is episode 7. I think. And so I'm still finding my grounding. I'm still finding my footing. And you're only the second guest I've ever had on the show. So good job. You've made it. You've arrived.
I think I have. I mean, have we started? Is this it?
Yeah, this is definitely it.
Okay.
We're definitely putting that on there.
Things are going to change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
But
So-
maybe I should introduce you first.
I kind of think I have made it in a way because I don't get opportunities to sit down with someone who I know cares about music as much as I do and talk about it for a long time. And not only that, not just music, but hum.
Yes.
Like
Hum.
I've been looking forward to this all week because I don't know anyone else I can sit down with and talk and who wants to talk about hum for an hour. So,
I know. You found the guy and you found him 23 years ago.
Right. So I made it 23 years ago.
Yeah.
It just took
It
that
just now
long to
it's
lead to
coming
this.
to fruition. Yeah. Well, what I love about this too is when TikTok thing started to blow up for me and I started getting this platform, you said it out of the gate. I mean, it was like you were like, "Can we talk about hum? Can we talk about hum?" And I was like, "Yes,
Yeah, a
of
little
course."
obsessed.
He's a little obsessed. No, and actually, I think it's a perfect one. But before we go into that, I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, to Waterproof Records, episode 7, I think, Jarrett Dapier. Jarrett Dapier, welcome to Waterproof Records. Jarrett is an accomplished writer of children's picture books, and he just recently released this is the first one, right? This is the first children's book to come out. Jazz for Lunch, which I have in my hands right here. Look at that. Look, his name right up there. So cool. And you have a second book coming out this next Tuesday. Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, it's been an exciting month.
Yes,
2
it
books in a
has.
month, and then a third one in a year. So it's 3 books in a year.
3 books. Amazing. Congratulations on
Oh,
that.
so I'll
And-
tell you about that one.
yeah, please. Will you show
It's
it?
called Mr. Watson's Chickens.
Yeah.
Jazz for Lunch, obviously being a book in part about jazz, is about music and includes music, of course, and the telling of it is very rhythmic and musical. Mr. Watson's Chickens also involves music. However, the music is made by a enormous chicken band that gets out of hand.
Yeah. Out of hand chicken band.
That's right. It's the Out of Hand Chicken Band book. And I think you just wrote a blurb.
Yeah, I did, right?
It's
the out of hand chicken
of
band.
Jacob Gibbons of TikTok says it's an out of hand chicken band. And you got to get this in your hand. So
I speak like I'm Shel Silverstein, basically. Yeah.
yes.
Anyway.
So there is music in it, and it does play an important part to the plot. But it's about 2 men with entirely too many chickens.
Yeah.
And they're
A common problem.
Yes. Well, they started with 3, but it ended with 456, and they've all moved in. And so,
that's so many chickens.
yeah. And one of them, Aunt Agnes, is a singer, and she's written her own song, and she sort of leads the chorus.
Yeah.
And they do it at like 2 a.m. And so finally, one of the men is like, "We got to get rid of these. Let's find them a loving home." And so they do, but chaos ensues on the way to the fair, where they are looking for new owners. So
I can't wait to own this one too. I'm going to buy it.
Comes out Tuesday, October 5th.
October 5th. Well, this will probably air after it's already out. So if you're listening now, it's
can
already
buy it.
available. So go get it. And then
Why aren't you getting it right now?
why are you listening to this show? You should be buying the book.
Unless you're driving and listening to this to get it.
That's great. That's the best of both worlds. But then you have a third one as well, and it also has the musical component. And
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason is, before you say that, is I have you on this show for that very reason. Because, look, I have done stand-up comedy in LA for almost a decade. And so as soon as I started a podcast, I'm sure that all my comedian friends are like, "I want to be on this podcast. I want to be on this podcast. I want to do the show." But I have rules. My rules are, you have to be a musician of some sort, I believe, for this show, or at least somebody who has made it painfully clear to me that they're obsessed with bands as much as I am. And in the comedy world, that hasn't necessarily happened so much. So the people that I'm inviting to be on the show are people that I know that have played in bands, have written music, have been in that culture, and also just could honestly talk about a band for about an hour and easily. Yeah. And so, but that's why I invited Jarrett Dapier. Was my college roommate at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I actually talked about him on the Siamese Dream episode. So he's here now to stand up for himself when I said, yeah, Jarrett's telling me about this part in Geek USA where the drum fill was like super hard. And I talked to him later on the phone, and he was like, no, I just wasn't a good enough drummer at the time, but it's a very cool fill. But here, this is the drummer that I was referring to. And anyway, all that being said, glad you're on the show. Tell me a little bit about the third book, and then we'll get into Hum.
So I've been a lifelong drummer. I've been playing since I was in third grade, and so it's no accident that my first three books are all about either music or they're all about music. And but the jazz book and the third book that I'm going to talk about are in many ways my attempt to drum with words.
Oh, cool. Well said.
Which, it's anybody who loves hip hop or poetry, that's not a new concept in a lot of ways, but that's how I look at it while I'm writing. And I have to like the rhythm that I'm inventing, and it has to sort of fit the flow of what I'm creating and tell a story at the same time.
Sure.
So I've really fallen in love, especially the less drumming I can do these days. I pretty much only drum with, myself.
Yeah. And you send me videos of you drumming.
Right. It sounds weird, but it is just me solo in the basement. And I don't mind that. Some drummers hate that. They can't do it. If they're not with a band, then they're not drumming. I'm fine. I'm really hyperactive and get kind of anxious when I can't drum. And so if I give myself just a good half hour every few days, it's a good week. So, but writing is a lot quieter. I have a dog who's terrified of the drums, so I have even more obstacles than, having no one else to play with. But writing is a lot quieter.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this book based on my own experience. In 2009, I was invited to the Obama White House to play, so cool. Play at their Halloween celebration, which Michelle Obama, I guess, was the mastermind behind. She details it in her book, Becoming, about how she fought for this Halloween celebration. Yeah. The White House didn't want to do it because it was a recession. They said it would look bad, but she was like, I'm inviting children to trick or treat at the White House. What looks bad about that?
Happiness.
Right.
Okay.
Children together.
Yeah. Right.
With their families invited. Yeah. And that's the thing. It wasn't like you didn't have to be some special child. Yeah. It was 2,500 area DC school children and their families. Yeah. Lining up and walking up the drive, and trick-or-treating, and Michelle and Barack were there handing out candy. And I was invited to drum on the grounds during the trick-or-treating with two other guys as part of this Chicago theater company called Red Moon. And Red Moon is no longer it's no longer in business, but they knew some people who knew some people, and they're known for really interesting, sort of theatrical spectacle outdoors, particularly. And so someone called them and said, hey, bring your skeleton drummers. I guess they would do these Halloween spectaculars, and they would have drummers who are lurking skeletons playing sort of found objects. They had this thing called a drum cart, and it was basically like a trailer covered in junk and old, terrible bass drums and oil cans and so forth. And I and these two other guys just basically jammed for 2.5 hours straight. Yeah. And our hands were hamburger when it was over. And what was funny is all along we'd been thinking, I wonder if they're gonna, because we knew there was a party after the trick-or-treating, and it was for military families. And nobody knew whether we were allowed to go in. And
really?
So, right. So,
and your skeletons too. So,
right. Like, could we be part of the entertainment inside? I don't know.
Right.
And then we're sort of like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And then they're like, hey guys, you know, if you need to go chill out after your performance, there's the tent right there. And we went down, and by the time we like got to the tent, the whole White House had been like shut down, doors closed, locked, and
not getting in there at all. No
one
way.
of the Secret Service guy goes, "There's the gate," and it was like, "See ya,
see you later."
All right, this
completely
is great.
understood.
I'm not going to complain, but
right.
Cool opportunity. Some of the Red Moon folks did get to go in, but we were sort of locked out. The drummers were.
Yeah.
Anyways,
classic drummers always being left behind.
Right. They're like, they don't even know how to find their ass with two hands. We can't let them in the White House.
The bass players were treated way worse, though. Right.
Yeah. They weren't even invited. They were just at the gate.
They weren't even invited.
Yeah.
Just at the gate. Drummers, you guys go home. Lead singers and guitarists, you go hang out and have dinner with Michelle and Barack. Bass players are not allowed on the grounds.
No, and actually, I can see you right now, bass players. Could you go? Just walk down the street.
You're embarrassing yourselves. I say that in jest. If you're a bass player and you're listening, it's just a joke. You know why we're making that joke, because you're often left behind. That's why.
It's like that meme of the drowning.
Yes.
The drowning child is well, they said that's the rhythm guitarist, and then the one who's sunken and like a skeleton is the bassist.
Yeah, always. And
then everyone else is like focused on the singer.
Yeah. So great.
So the book is called Skeleton Stomp: A Haunted Tour of the White House.
Awesome.
And it comes out next fall, 2022. And it is about 3 skeleton drummers who are actual skeletons, not humans dressed up. And they get invited to the White House by the First Lady to drum at the Halloween ball. And those skeleton drummers get to go inside.
Right, what you don't know, like they always say.
Right.
Right, what you don't know.
Right. So I created 3 characters that I'm
so you can
jealous
vicariously experience this White House tour.
Right. They get to go in, and now I'm resentful of my own creation.
I hope on your book tour for this book, you're always a little angry when you're like, read the book. Their life is way better than mine.
Right. It's all fake, though.
It's all fake.
It didn't happen.
Well, that's exciting. So 3 books. They sound like a blast. You're a drummer. I've always known you as a drummer, and we met each other in Champaign, Urbana, and it's fitting because we're talking about drums, we're talking about bands, but we're specifically talking about hum, and we're talking about You'd Prefer an Astronaut and that entire thing. And that's what's so cool about our connection is we were there. We were going to school where this band was formed and where they started, and so I think we kind of have this connection to them. And as I can see from your home, if you're watching the podcast, he's surrounded himself with hum art, and it looks awesome. So, just like mine, which was a gift from you, by the way. This was a gift from Jarrett to me. That's why I have it.
And I have a stack of other hum posters that I thought I'd given you a different one.
No.
And I was like, wait, you have the astronaut one? I thought I sent you the dinosaur one.
Yeah.
But they're all the same artist. Jay Ryan is the genius behind these hum posters. And he has been making hum posters because he went to U of I, and he knew the guys in hum, I think, from Electra 2000.
Wow.
Maybe before it came out. I don't know. But he's been making posters for them for 30 years. And
that's amazing.
Or 25 years. And so I'm on the mission. My mission is to find as many of Jay's posters as I can. It's just the ones from like 1998, 1999 are impossible to find. And if you do, people sell them for like $700.
Yeah.
But these are Jay Ryan posters, and the one behind you is too. He's Jay Ryan of the Bird Machine. Yeah. And he might still have some hum posters for sale on his site. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's been some savvy listeners to the TikToks and the videos that I make, and they've called him out in the comments. They've absolutely been like, "Oh, you got a Jay Ryan." You know what I mean? So been a lot. There's been people who have recognized it 100% when I'm live streaming or whatever. So it's been cool to have it.
He has one that I am always on the hunt for, which is, I think it was 2001 or 2000. It was a New Year's Eve show in Chicago. I can't remember what club. It might have been Metro, but it was Hum with the Flaming Lips.
Oh, wow.
I know.
So
Number one,
good.
why wasn't I there?
Why weren't
Number
you
two,
there? First of all,
why didn't I buy the poster at the time? And then the other one I really want is Hum, The Promise Ring, and Heroic Doses from 1998.
That's good.
It's a great poster. So if you have it, anybody, I'll buy it off you for like 25 cents.
I love it. I just saw a poster. I was in Vegas for a conference, and I was in this Guinness tavern that is, in one of the hotel. It's like a place you can go eat. It's like, imitating a Guinness Irish pub. And in the back, they had a framed Radiohead and Beck poster from Ireland. And the artwork on it was kind of like circus, bizarre. And I was like, I have to get this poster. I don't know where I can find it, but it looked amazing. It was a lineup from, 1995 or something. So,
oh my God.
Looked incredible.
Did you look for it?
I've started on the hunt to see if I can find it. So,
because a lot of Jay's prints end up on eBay or on this website called Espresso Beans, where poster collectors sell to each other.
Oh, that's cool.
And I actually bought that one off of Espresso Beans from a guy actually who lives like a mile from me.
That's awesome.
But I don't know anybody else who made Hum posters. Like, I'm sure RCA made, astronaut posters of the album cover when it came out, but
sure.
I want to say Jay is like the only one
He's
who
gotta
ever
be.
made.
It's such to commit like literally so much of his life to this one band. It's amazing. That's what I love about it is he has such a unique. Each one is different. Each one has a different flair to it, and I can see why people would want to collect these and chase these down. And Hum is just an incredible band, and
that I think he connects with them really well. That's why his art for this band in particular is always amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're so great, and you'd prefer an astronaut is where we're going to focus. Even though we could talk about how, even as recently as last year, they dropped Inlet on us, and it blew our minds. It was incredible, and we have Downward is Heavenward, and we have so many good albums from the band. But we're going to focus on this one because obviously I could have you come back and we just cover the entire Hum.
I'm sure we'll touch on the others, but
we can.
But that's the one that broke out for them. I mean. It's not the first one I heard.
You've always been more music savvy. For my listeners, okay, so Jarrett is Chicago-based fella, and he grew up in the Chicagoland area. And as you guys already know, is that a Chicago thing?
Chicago Star.
Oh, it's a Chicago. See, that's how little I lived there for a short while. I went
to
college
back to
there.
Oklahoma, kid.
Yeah, right. But where I grew up, obviously the bands were not coming in as frequently. But Jarrett, as a teen, was exposed to, clubs like the Metro and these places where these amazing epic bands. And then also being a drummer, you were in bands through high school. What were some of the bands that you played in during high school in the Chicago suburbs?
That's a good question, particularly for this episode, because the main band that I was in high school was called Shat.
I still love that name so much. Shat.
Yeah. And actually Shat was together for my high school years. And the reason it's good for this episode is because if there were any two bands that Shat was, some people said ripping off, other people said, inspired by, we were somewhere in the middle. If there were any two bands, it was Helmet and Hum.
Great choices.
Everything we could to sound like Hum, as massive as Hum, as heavy as Hum, and sort of honestly, my goal as a drummer was to I was very, very, very inspired by Bryan St. Pere. I naturally drummed in a really busy way. Yeah. But hearing him and being in a band that was trying to sound like his band was pretty amazing. And I remember even our senior year, the guitarist bought an orange stack.
Amazing.
And that's exactly what Matt Talbot plays. And we were really trying to like achieve that massive sound. And it was because basically my freshman year, so this is 1993, freshman year, the guitarist of Shat,
Yeah, guitarist. See, they're one and the same.
Right. Such posers.
Such posers. I love it.
Yeah, newsflash, you're not in Hum.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, 1993, the guitarist of Shat, he introduced me to Electro 2000, and it blew my mind, especially, Ironclad Lou and Scraper were my two favorite songs. And Scraper opens with this incredible drum fill that I always thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
And Electro 2000 was the first time I fell in love with Hum. Like just the rawness of it and the massive sound was infectious to me. And sort of like Helmet, it hit me at a time that I was like, this is exactly the band I need right now.
Yeah.
And, but then when Astronaut came out, it took it to a whole other level of, just loving the band, like a whole other level of love. Honestly, it was, cause it sounded, the recording is amazing. And of course the songwriting is great. And, Bryan St. Pierre, from the drummer perspective, I thought he does some of the most amazing work that he ever did on that album.
To somebody who's not a drummer, to me, it was just so, there was a pounding that was so much stronger than other drummers. And that's like, there is, and I don't know how that is down to people who are recording engineers, but it's very noticeable. You go, here we are in this soft part of the song, this slowed down part, and the drums are still just hitting with this ferocity that you go, not everybody does that. You know, most drummers go, all right, the guitars are slow, so we're going to really bring it down. No.
Right. No. And actually, I was just listening to an interview with him on the Trap Set podcast with Bryan St. Pierre. And he was talking about that. He said, I'm sure other drummers sort of adjust for the studio. They know how to adjust for live, adjust for studio. Yeah. He's like, I can't do it. He said, I play as hard as I can because in a lot of ways it was a way for him to pound out his own anxiety and his own inner critic.
Yeah.
So he said the whole band would play as loud as, it was basically live in the studio, but if you've ever seen a Hum show, live is pounding.
Yeah.
But I read that he said in the interview that he hit so hard live that he tied himself to his drum set.
Really?
I guess so he wouldn't knock himself over.
It's amazing.
It is. I don't know if he was talking in jest, but he answered pretty seriously when someone said, do you still tie yourself to your drum set? And it was a listener asking a question and he said, oh yeah, I still do that. I have to.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
On that note, I want to mention that one particularly meaningful part of this conversation is when Bryan St. Pierre died this summer. Mm-hmm. There have been famous people or just people that are well known who have died it's broken my heart when they've died.
Sure.
John Hughes was one. Maurice Sendak, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
But this hit me in the gut and in the heart. And I saw a lot of people talking about, how much he mattered to them. A lot of drummers talked about how much he mattered to them and how finding his work really inspired them and also spoke to them for whatever reason. Certain drummers speak to people. There are some that don't speak to me at all. And then there are some, and Bryan St. Pierre is at the top, that speak to me, but also it's hard to express. He found pockets and corners in melody and in just sort of time signatures that he accented and his off key or his off tempo sort of like busy playing that he would occasionally throw in. And it all spoke to, I don't know. I have ADHD and I don't know if it was my sort of runaway brain feeling, because that's how I always drummed, which was like, yeah, this is a straightforward guitar line, but I could also throw in this and I could accent this with this cool fill here and then come back to the center. And he was doing that constantly. And I don't know, it was you know, people talk about, oh, when I found Margaret Atwood, you know, or Toni Morrison for the first time, it was almost like I felt seen.
Sure.
That's how I felt about Bryan St. Pierre. It's like, oh, he does it the way I want to do it. And he gets it. And it comes from an emotional place that is just driving and beautiful. And it's also really technically just awesome.
That's so awesome.
So Neil Peart, Bryan St. Pierre, and then Tim Alexander from Primus, all in that period. And then John Stanier from Helmet, all four of them, basically from 92 to 94 or like 91 to 94. I found them all. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say I wouldn't be the person I am today without them, because
sure.
They made me want to drum as much as possible. But they also showed me the way to drum that or a way to drum that I wanted to do, that felt the most authentic expression of myself in music.
Yeah.
Oh, the fifth guy is Jimmy Chamberlain.
Chamberlain. Yeah.
All in that period, 91 to 94.
What a discovery of musicians.
Or 93. Yeah.
Yeah. And during your formative years.
It's an enormous loss that Bryan is gone.
Absolutely.
He was 52 or 53. And, you know, we talked about it. Inlet is absolutely brilliant. And when it came out, my first thought, number one, it came out during like lockdown, pretty much.
Like height of lockdown. Yep. I remember.
It felt like a gift from, I don't know.
Yeah, a gift from the music gods, right? It was like like we got bestowed something. They hadn't released anything new in 22 years. It was literally like, we get a new Hum album and it's recorded analog, and Bryan St. Pierre's on it. It was like so great, because he had taken some time out of the band, if I remember right.
He did. And
so this was
on all the albums, but he left. He stepped away from the band for a while during like the sort of 2010 period to like 2015.
Yeah, so it was a big deal to get him back for recording. You know,
and I guess they'd been recording for the last 4 or 5 years, and they didn't even know if they would release any of it.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Maybe. It's just such a visceral sound. As soon as you pop it in, you kind of go, this doesn't sound like it's been run through, 20 computers. This sounds like something from a studio, from the time, yet modernized. You know, they'd grown and matured. It sounded like,
and that's the singer, Matt Talbot, is the engineer and
so good.
Basically producer. I think probably all of them are sort of the producer, but he engineered it at his own studio, which is Earth Analog down in Tolono, Illinois.
Yeah.
I think it's the best recorded of all their albums, even though they all sound great to me.
They all sound great. Yeah, he's really good.
And Bryan's on it. But as soon as it came out, I thought, I cannot wait until all this shit is over.
Yeah.
And we're back to seeing live shows.
And we can go see live music, go see Hum.
I can go see him playing Inlet.
Yeah.
See Hum playing Inlet. And, and then whatever future drumming he would have done.
Yeah.
And continued to touch people. I mean, the tributes that I saw from drummers, it's clear I'm not alone at all.
Yeah.
And also, it was just, a lot of people wrote stuff online, and I just couldn't. I really felt pain. And I thought, well, one day I'll either write about it or I'll get to talk about it. And so that's why this podcast also, I was like, this is a meaningful way to think about and talk about Bryan's contribution to music and rock music.
Yeah.
Because he's among the best. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm so glad, man. I'm so glad. And that's the thing, is that I never got the chance to see Hum live. And I know you have. You got a chance. I never got a chance to see them live. Heartbreaking. I know you're going to spit your drink out.
No, it's just...
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Man. It's like a spit take. Like, I never got to see Hum, and you're just like...
He almost did that.
Yeah.
It was either spit it out or choke.
I never got a chance to see him. And really, for me, life moves fast. It really does. And when you're living in the 90s, here I am becoming the 90s music guy, and I'm reminiscing. And I mean, I did live those moments, but life's coming at you and you're not aware that you're living through what I think we can all agree is an iconic era.
Yeah.
And the youth of today, you can absolutely say to me that there are great bands, there's amazing artists, and I believe it. And you and I all the time are sending each other artists that we think are great. And there's a lot of good music coming out. But the 90s was a very specific window of what was happening in the cultural zeitgeist, and like there was a feeling in the air, but you weren't able to stop and go, this is important. So here I am at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign getting drunk at Murphy's Pub. And if there was an opportunity to go see Hum on campus, I didn't know how important it would have been for me to go do that. And so, I saw some shows. I saw Sunny Day Real Estate at Canopy Club. Right. I saw Pumpkins at Canopy Club. I saw a few more, but I missed Hum. But did you get to see them when we were going to school there?
Yeah.
You did?
So, yeah, it wasn't so much like this is important. It's just like you loved the band so much. Like
after the Bryan St. Pierre story, you can see why if you had an opportunity to go see them. For me, I'm like the band that released Stars and my favorite song, Why I Like the Robins. Right. That's where I was.
Oh, okay. For me, it was like this deeply rooted love.
Totally.
And like getting to see Matt Talbot with his glasses. He wore these big glasses, but he would wear the athletic band that held him on his head.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of that. Yeah,
so that he could headbang as hard as he freaking could.
Yeah,
and I remember that the first time I saw them was after Astronaut came out, and it was at the Metro, and Silverchair opened.
Awesome show.
If the listeners are listening, if they remember Silverchair.
They must have been 15, 16 years old at the time or something like that.
And speaking of resentment, I was sitting there I was in chat at the time and I was like, they get to open for Hum? Who are these?
Who are these Australian bastards?
Yeah, exactly. No offense, Silverchair.
No. Actually, and they actually went on to do after Tomorrow. Some of the records they put out are pretty great. Like I think that they don't get as much credit. I've been thinking about doing a video on Silverchair because I think that they got written off in the grunge era, and actually, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
And actually,
bands,
I think their hearts were in the right place.
Yeah,
they were not. I don't know. They were pretty straightforward that they were heavy and wanted to rock. Yeah. And I respect that. That's fine.
Yeah.
We used to laugh though about the Tomorrow song because the lyrics are so memorable.
Yeah.
What is it? You have to
wait to, you gotta wait.
You have to wait too, fat boy.
Yeah, I know. I remember listening to that as a kid and being like, is he saying fat boy?
Yeah. Who's he talking? Is he talking about me?
So mean.
Yeah. I hope the kid that's about doesn't know this.
Doesn't know that these Australians are ripping him a new one for being overweight. Yeah.
But they opened
and Hum. Yeah.
So Hum at the Metro, I'm so thankful I saw that because Metro I think it's one of the greatest venues in the world.
Sure.
Anybody who comes to Chicago, check what's going on at the Metro if you've never been there. And
you took me there. There our junior year. Yep.
So it was an 18 and over show and I was 15.
Amazing.
And I was like, how am I going to get in? And my older brother lent me his ID and I look nothing like him. I mean, I
can verify this. Yeah, you don't look anything like him. By the way, this has all been a setup for you to admit that you broke the law, and I'm going to use this to.
They're actually still looking for me because of that. Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
The sadness about that show is I went with my friend John, and John drove us down. I think it was just me and him, and John goes down and drives us, and he's got a fake ID too.
Yeah.
And they look at mine and then look at me. And I remember to this day, my brother like sort of had a scowl in the photo.
So you were scowling. I was
going like this. And I was so bad. I was obviously 15, but the guy just went, whatever. And he gave and I went in, but then John was right behind me. He looks at it and he goes, I don't buy it. And he sent John out.
Oh no.
And I turned around and I looked at him and I was like, John, what do you want us to do? And he goes, just go in. Go. And it was like a scene out of a movie. Yeah.
Go on without me.
I'll be fine. And then I found out later after that while we were all rocking out watching Hum, because a couple of other friends who went separately all got in.
Yeah.
While we were watching Hum at the Metro, John was sitting alone in a McDonald's a block away. And at that point, there's no phones, there's nothing. John was just sitting in McDonald's waiting for us.
Just like this. Just this how he's got a McChicken in front of him and he's going, she thinks she missed the train tomorrow.
And then someone says, "Sir, are you okay?" He's like, Can't you hear the band? Can't you hear them?"
I'm listening to Hum right now. Poor John.
I always felt bad for John. So John saw Rage Against the Machine at Metro, and I didn't get to go.
So all's fair.
I think he also went to the Siamese Dream release show at Metro.
Then John has had a good life.
Fine.
Well, you were saying earlier about how, speaking of Rage Against the Machine, short tangent, I was listening to Tom Morello the other day, and he was saying on the show, you were saying how you were inspired by Hum and Helmet and wanted to sound like those bands. He said when they were recording their album, there's a part in Wake Up in the minute where it goes, he's like, they literally were in the studio and being like, how can we sound as much like Helmet as possible? Like in that moment. And when you listen to it, you go, oh, yeah, totally. That's a Helmet riff. 100%.
5 on Meantime, I think, goes.
Yeah.
And I bet that's totally Wake Up. Oh my God.
Yeah. So he was like the bass player was listening to so much Helmet at the time. So anyway, I digress.
I could go on for an hour about Helmet, but
yeah, we could also do that too. You may just be like, I may have guests on this show that go on for years and years, but you'll end up being my Andy Richter to David Letterman. Although I think I said the same thing to John. So I think to John Walker, my previous guest. So I think what I'll do is I'll have like the longest couch of my friends that are there forever. Just always like, John, Jarrett, just go on.
Any of you available? Because I don't have content this week.
I don't have content this week. Can you just get on the show and talk to me? It does make it more fun. I'll be honest. Like, I love doing the show and I love talking about bands, and I can get very vulnerable when it's just me by myself. So those will always exist. But when you can talk to a person, a friend about music, it does. I mean, I can't believe how long we've already been talking, and it feels like no time has flied by at all. We've barely talked about you'd prefer an astronaut. We talked about so many things. So let's dig into the album.
I saw them on that tour. Or I don't even know if it was a tour. It was like their Chicago show after it was released. And we were totally into that album.
Yeah.
At that point, 1995.
1995. Yeah.
I still remember the little stickers I bought at that show.
Yeah, with the zebra. It probably had a zebra on it.
No,
right?
It was a star that was sort of flowing across, and it said Hum in the trail of the star.
Do you still have it?
I put those stickers everywhere. I'm not like you. I actually put them on things.
You put them on things. You heard me talk about it on the show, how I'm one of those people. I still have all the stickers because I never have the courage to stick them anywhere.
I would put them all over my Walkman.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, that album, You'd Prefer an Astronaut, came out. I have the date in front of me. It came out on April 11th, 1995. It was recorded in 94 to 95. They recorded Playground in Chicago and Pachyderm Studio, Canyon Falls, Minnesota. But
so the Pachyderm didn't happen. I guess they went up for a week.
Oh, okay. So you've got this to back it up.
Didn't work out.
So it's listed incorrectly.
Oh, does it say it was recorded? I mean,
it says it lists both. So they're probably like somebody has the fact that they went there for a little bit and it didn't come together.
It was just a week, and then they were like, "This isn't working," and so they came back to Chicago and recorded there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's runs 45 minutes. It's got the distortion and the sound on it is so great, and the fact that you know about Pachyderm is you can trust listeners because Jarrett has actually sat down and interviewed members of the band in the past. Can you just mention a brief snippet of that, and then we'll talk more about the album?
Yeah. So the now defunct Alarm magazine hired me to interview them before their 2008, 2009 New Year's Eve, New Year's Day shows at the Double Door, which I saw. And so that was one of the few shows I've ever been to where I was in the front. And amazing. I had a direct line on Bryan St. Pierre, and it was an incredible show. And that's the show that I would think of when Inlet came out, and I thought I have to have that experience again, but with Inlet songs now.
Yeah.
Because that ended up being the best one I'd ever seen. And and I have the poster from it by Jay Ryan, but
that's awesome.
It's in the basement. Anyways, I interviewed them because that show was happening, and I interviewed Matt Talbot and Jeff Dempsey, the bassist.
Yeah.
And it was funny. Jeff and I had more of a heart to heart, and Matt was really funny. Like I asked him, when you guys played out a lot, was Chicago one of your favorite places, or was it your favorite place? And he's like, Chicago was all right, and they always treated us well. But we really loved Kansas City. Like, we just felt at home in Kansas City. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, they ended up, when Bryan wasn't playing with them, one of the drummers from Shiner filled in. Oh. And Shiner's from Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
And if I got that wrong, don't yell at me.
Yeah.
But I'm almost positive. And anyways, I asked Matt, so what was it about Kansas City that you liked it a lot? And he said, there's a lot of dirt bags in Kansas City, and all four of us are just giant dirt bags, so we fit in.
So he was just enjoying having a good time with you, having a laugh.
He was just, he was like, I think we talked a little bit about lyrics. Jeff and I talked about the fact that Stars was featured in a Cadillac commercial at the end of the 90s.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. No.
Yeah, it was like this sleek Cadillac, and it's like somehow they were connecting this Hum song to Cadillac.
Yeah.
And I asked him about it, and he said, I was like, did you get any shit for that? Or because it was like, at that time it was not cool to like have everybody song did it after 2000, but it was not cool then. And he was like, no, it was fine. We thought it was funny, and they paid us really well. So
yeah. So why not?
Yeah.
We're from Champaign, Urbana,
right?
Man. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And I want to get back to the Champaign connection, because I do think that I know that people all over the world have a special connection to Hum. So it's not like exclusive, but I do know that people in Champaign, the way people in Chicago feel about Smashing Pumpkins, the people in Champaign who love rock and metal own Hum. Yeah. They love them. And that is a very special connection, because they were there since 1989 and maybe a little earlier. And they always, they would play all the time down there, and they're a Champaign band at a time when there were loads of awesome Champaign bands.
Yeah.
Poster Children, Braid, even like ones that didn't break out, like Jenny Choi was one that when we were in school, I remember going to see all these bands and I was in love. I just loved being in Champaign. So Hum though was like sort of the
star, the shining star
of Champaign, after REO Speedwagon.
Of course.
Well, they're always going to be at the top, but
and anybody you can talk about, we've said Stars a couple times on here, but obviously me growing up in Oklahoma, my only exposure to bands really was from 120 Minutes, Alternative Nation, and things like that. And so Stars was the song that I heard. And then, and listeners of the show know that I've already talked about how Pixies and everything, that Quiet Loud, like that's, you're going to get an instant win from me when you do that. And when I heard the opening of Stars, just with that soft opening, that boom, and then we go in, and it's almost like there's moments of the song where there's like metal riffs. We're literally in like this shoegaze song, and then all of a sudden they're riffing like a thrash song, like and I was like,
I think I've sent it.
Yeah.
I think I've sent you the actual moment that part starts in Stars.
Yes.
Where it's going. Yeah. And I remember when I saw them at the Double Door, and I watched the guitarist, the bassist, and the other guitarist, and all their hands were doing the same thing.
Exact same movement.
Hypnotizing.
Yes.
And I was transported, I have to say.
Yes, it still gets me to this day. I can still play that song, and I lose my mind every time I hear it. It's still so awesome. And I know at the time, like we talked about, they were getting comparisons to Pumpkins and whatnot, and getting unfairly so. Yeah. Because really, if you're saying, okay, this band's using octave chords, this band's using octave chords, that's about as close as it's getting. You're going, well, Hum was clearly forging their own path, and I've even referenced it before. they're the ones who set the stage for bands that we like now called Nothing. I mean, bands like Hum set the path for Nothing to, not Nothing, Nothing the band,
Yeah, totally. No. And, some of those comparisons to the Pumpkins, I think, are partially like, okay, the center part of Stars is like the sort of chord that hangs.
Totally.
That one is similar to, the brief moment in the Mayonnaise choruses from Smashing Pumpkins. And so, sure. But also, I think the comparisons, people maybe didn't realize the reason they were putting them together was because the guitars sounded, at that point, it was Siamese Dream. The guitars sounded incredible.
Yes.
And warm.
Yes.
And both bands' drummers were inventive and like powerful and technically skilled in ways that they could show in ways that weren't pretentious. They fit.
They fit.
And they were enthusiastic. They're enthusiastic drummers.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people were responding to, but instead I think, according to one of the guys that I interviewed, I think it was Jeff said that, critics dismissed them, especially after Downward is Heavenward, that they're just a Smashing Pumpkins ripoff. And I just don't get it at all. I never thought of that until you said it.
It's one of those things that when you make the comparison or somebody says the comparison, I'm like, not at all. I know both bands so well. That's like somebody saying, that it's like somebody saying that you're exactly like your brother or something. Right. And you go, we're completely different people. Like we're not, we may share parents.
We're both humans.
Yeah. We're both human beings that breathe. And
one is a band. The other one's a band. One has 4 guys. One has 4 people. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like these comparisons. I just think that they really rose above all that and contributed to the 90s and early 2000 music scene in a meaningful way.
We should talk about, though, that moment in Stars when the first
riff
cymbal hit.
Oh, when the first cymbal hits, yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because I feel like it's a segue for us into talking about just how beautifully recorded this album is.
Oh yeah,
it's hit hits you in the center of your chest.
It does
in a way that very few moments in other albums do, and it's because they've the engineer captured their hugeness in that moment and then does throughout the whole album too.
Yeah. And, audio recording has gotten sophisticated. Obviously we've got a lot more technical things with computers and fast processors, and drummers can sync up their time. They're not as beholden to the rules of back then of things just being a live take. But there is something, and this makes me sound like an old man, but there is something about recording to tape and about the performance being live that there's a little bit of, I actually just heard, so Nevermind just celebrated their 30 year. And they've been playing on Sirius XM. They've been playing all these, 20-year anniversary interviews with Dave Grohl. And he was talking about that, about how on those takes, he would listen back and be like, oh no, like, is this even good enough? Because I'm not keeping time well enough. But there is something that you can't take away from that raw feeling of this song is moving at its own pace. Nobody synced it up perfectly. It's going exactly as the feeling in the room was taking you.
Yeah.
And that's the same with this. And when you get albums like Inlet, you go, nobody sat down and said, we got to make sure that this snare and kick drum are perfectly timed. It's not happening.
Exactly.
And that's, you can tell.
What's interesting is Bryan St. Pierre in the Trap Set interview, which I highly recommend.
I'll check it out.
They're another music podcast that I was blown away by.
Not as good as this one, though. Nowhere close. They might be bigger, but no, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm kidding.
They just have more episodes.
They just have more episodes and millions of listeners. But hey, who's counting?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But he talked about the anxiety he felt when he recorded.
Yeah.
He was a very anxious man. He admitted this like very, very openly, that he's extremely anxious and a big worrier, and he was so self-conscious while drumming. Yeah. And this is what is an incredible thing to listen to, is like, from my ears as a teenager listening to Astronaut and Electra 2000, I was like, he is flowing, and he's finding his own way of expressing himself within these songs. And I love it. And he's so good. And then to hear him talk about it, he was never satisfied with himself. He always thought that recording was extremely stressful because it was going to tape and because, that was that good? And constantly questioning himself. Yeah. Was that right? And then he said, even in the middle of a take, he would be going, should I play that fill that you've been practicing, that you've like prepared for this, or should I just wing it right now? And so he was like always in his head. Yeah. And he said the way he got out of that was by hitting as hard as he could and listening to the others and trying to drown out that inner voice.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But Astronaut captures that huge sound. Did you listen to the first song much when you had the album?
No.
Yeah.
I skipped it. I did.
Because the pod is incredible.
The pod's amazing. And so Little Dipper, it's funny, right before we started recording today, I popped it on, of course, because I was like, well, let's just get the energy going. Let's feel it. And I listened to Little Dipper and I was like, yeah, it's a good song. But for some reason, when I owned it, I would go right into the pod.
Yeah.
I just needed the way that stuff is going in reverse, at the beginning. Yes. And you're kind of being like, I'm being pulled into the tractor beam of hum, yes. and whoever did the track listing of that album at first, they just chose poorly on how to kick off the album. I think.
Although my older brother, who's a Hum fan too, he says it's ballsy.
It's a ballsy move.
They opened with like a sleeper that is huge and heavy and awesome, and you expect it to be the pod that like kicks it off.
Yeah.
And they do that on Inlet, where like the third song is this 8-minute like just drop D sort of like
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been pulled down into the earth.
Sort of
totally. Amazing quality, but. I always jump to the pod.
Went to the pod, and then you go to Stars after that, and I would say the rest of the album I listened to. I love Why I Like the Robins. That's actually my that was my favorite song on the album.
So you and I are I know we have a lot in common.
Yeah, we do.
Why I Like the Robins was always my favorite, and Mayonnaise was my favorite on Siamese Dream.
Yeah, and
I was like, wait, your favorite's Mayonnaise?
Yeah.
Just recently.
And you want to know what's a funny thing that we also figured out? I've known Jarrett for 23, 24 years or however long it's been now. We just recently discovered we both loved horror movies. Remember like 6 months ago we were on the phone and we were like, why did we never talk about this in college?
Never.
We talked about bands. We talked about, plays and theater. We did a lot of plays together, but we didn't talk about how we both loved horror. And actually, I think that my horror love... So I loved it as a kid, but then I think as I've gotten older, I've like re-embraced it. You've probably had the same thing, which is we're dads, we're busy, we've got full lives. And so I'm just now able to start going back to music and movies and things that really meant a lot to me as a kid. And I'm able to enjoy them now. So that's probably why.
We talked a lot about Slow Dive and Hum that freshman year.
We did.
Yeah. And I see those two almost in a weird way as like brothers or sister bands. Like
totally.
I found Astronaut came out at the same year I found Souvlaki by Slow Dive.
Yeah.
One of my favorite albums to this day. And there's something about the sonic quality of both bands that is just like a warm blanket.
It really is. It really is. And I say that in that Siamese Dream Mayonnaise TikTok. I go distortion like a warm blanket. It really is. And you and I, we found each other because we met in the theater program that we left. But at that era in 1997, when you meet somebody else who has a passion for alternative music and bands and playing instruments, and, we were immediately drawn to each other. And then we kept that all the way through. I love Why I Like the Robins so much because of that. It hops. It's like, it's like, I like your raindrop collector. And then it just goes like,
and he's hitting as hard as he can.
Yes. And he's hitting as hard as he can. But that's the one that really stuck out to me at the time because all of them are fantastic songs. But yeah.
And to me, that song builds to this.
Yes.
I don't know if it's a chorus or what it is, but it's like, I always memorize these by drum parts where he just goes like, and it's like this driving middle part, like 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes into the song where he sort of sings on a higher notes.
Yeah.
And the drummer he's doing this off. he does these fills that like, and he's just flowing. But then he's throwing in these fills that are just perfect and incredible. And
I love it.
I always listen to that song a lot. And then, what do you think of Why or I Like Your Hair Long? Or is that the title?
That's the name of the title. And I got to tell you right now, I skipped that one too when I was listening to the album. It wasn't.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And it was because the hook of the chorus at the time didn't connect with me back then. It had this kind of like they were infusing it with a pop sensibility that I didn't feel like fit when I was listening to the album. Now I don't skip it, but at the time it felt like a hook, and it was like, this doesn't seem to match when I want to listen to Hum at all with what I'm feeling. But what about you?
And it's funny, I liked it a lot. It wasn't my favorite on the album, but I remember I had a good friend named Amy who really loved Hum too, and we were listening to it in her car, actually going to see Bjork, and we got to that song. She's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, what? And then it was because she was like, these lyrics are ridiculous. She's like, you're a waste of a song. Then why are you singing this? Yeah. And like, she couldn't get over the sort of meta quality that he was saying this song is a waste. And I don't want to sing about you, but he is singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
come on.
I never thought that hard, Amy.
You're so vain that you think this song is about you. It's been done.
Yeah,
where you know.
Exactly.
But it's funny. Mine is not lyrics based. If anything, I struggle to hear lyrics. I never hear lyrics. I never hear lyrics. I could listen to a song. Have I told this on the podcast? I got to tell it real quick. I made a mixtape for my wife, Jamie, when we were girlfriend and boyfriend in college. And I made her this mixtape that was just songs that I loved, because that's what I thought mixtapes were. We're literally like, in my brain and in my world, it was, you make a mixtape for your girlfriend or boyfriend that is representative of the music that you love so you can share it together. I didn't know that most people made mixtapes to communicate a message of love or passion or endearment. I never did that. No, but apparently, Jarrett, people did. Apparently they did. I would make a mixtape for a girlfriend and I would go, these are all songs that I think are awesome and you should know them. We are so the same. And I want listeners I really find me on social media and tell me if you were on the same wavelength. I'm making mixtapes going, this band rules. This song will melt your face off. This one makes me cry, not because of the words, but because of what it does to my soul. Right. And so I gave her this tape and it had Pulp's Like a Friend on there. And she's sitting there going, what is he trying to tell me? You're the last train I never should have caught. You're the body hidden in the trunk. Like all this shit in the lyrics that literally are like saying, I should have never met you. You're a disaster for my life. And she's like, and she told me, she's like, what did you want to do? And I was like, I just think that song rules. It's Pulp. It's great. It's a great song. I just think it's so great that you did the same thing. So apparently there was a whole contingent of teenagers at the time that were assembling mixtapes so that the lyrics would say, I want to make out, I want to go to bed with you, whatever. And that's the driving point. And I mean, when you're an alternative music fan, that's a hard thing to do because that's not what anybody's singing about.
No, I mean, like I would make mixtapes with Smallpox Champion on it.
Yeah.
And, by Fugazi and some Jawbox songs and Pond and these bands from Sub Pop. None of those songs were like
romantic
at all. It was like, I know the one Jawbox song was based on a novel about the guy who, Crash. It's the one about the guy who like intentionally crashes his car.
Oh, yeah. About the movie Crash, right?
I think the song was Motorist.
Yeah.
My Jawbox. So I would put that on and
there you go.
Not Crash the Academy Award winning one.
It's the other one. It's the one with James Spader in it. I saw that one in the theater. It's a very, very bizarre film.
So Jay Robbins from Jawbox was on 120 Minutes saying, Motorist is based on this messed up novel by J.G. Ballard.
Oh my
God.
And
it's like violent and bizarre.
Totally.
And I'd be like, hey, you got to check out Motorist.
You got to check out Motorist. It's a great song.
And she would be like, what? This is talking about like a car on fire and like flames and
What's wrong with you?
What is that?
So I just want you to know that we probably had many gals as young men that were probably completely thrown by our mixtape efforts. And,
yes, I know that now, I guess.
I know it now. But I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, at least you had Jamie to say.
Yeah, she was yeah, she married me, so it worked out okay.
Right.
And actually I think that the funny thing is when this TikTok thing started and I started doing these reenactments, she said to me, this is the guy I fell in love with. She goes, this is who you were in college. This is the guy that I met who would go on and on and on about bands or go like this. Listen to this part right here. Okay, listen to this part right here. She was like, that's the guy that I met who was 19 years old and would get in an argument at a party with people about bands that he loved and bands that he hated and all this stuff. And I was like, man, it's amazing to me that, in my 20s, 30s, how much of that part of me was just put on a shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, did I listen to music? Of course, I always did. But I didn't go, it's everything like I used to. So
it usually comes back to drummers for me because I immediately went back to, that didn't happen all the time for me anymore after college. But I remember when Block Party's Silent Alarm came out. Yeah. And the drummer on that is incredible. Yeah. And he's just like he's a maniac. Yeah. And he is just like
you showed me that album. Yeah.
Frenetic energy. And that was one that I would be like, have you heard Silent Alarm to people? But like, there haven't been many since whereas during high school and college, it seemed to be all the time.
All the time. Our lives revolved around it, which yet we didn't have the internet either. So it was if it was all the time, there was so much more time spent finding the CD or sitting around and listening and going through somebody else's collection. And it's amazing because we didn't have as much given to us as people do now, but yet it was so much more all consuming of my time and energy were bands.
Completely. And you know what, before I forget, I want to make sure to say to listeners, I just saw Smashing Pumpkins at Riot Fest in Chicago. Yeah. And it was the first time. I mean, I've seen hundreds of shows in my life, and it was the first time I've ever cried at a concert. And, there's a lot going on. Yeah. But when Billy Corgan was playing Disarm, which is not a song I particularly was drawn to, even as a high schooler, I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked it, but it wasn't like, oh, this is, seminal for me. He was singing it and he was doing it solo. And I just started sobbing, and my wife was next to me and she was really surprised. And she was being really nice and like rubbing my back. But, after it was over, she said, did that song have like a kind of meaning for you back in the day? And I was like, not at all. But last time I saw Smashing Pumpkins before that show was with a good friend of mine from high school who died the first month of freshman year of college. Wow. And I miss him like hell today. Yeah. And I started thinking about him. His name was Umir, and Umir was a great Pumpkins fan. And we saw them on the Melancholy tour together. And I don't know, he said those lines, something about, that little child. Yeah. And I thought about Billy Corgan weirdly, like probably in his 50s, looking back at how fast time has gone. Sure. And then that led me to thinking about, Jesus, it's been 24 years since I saw Umir. And the last time I heard this song live, it was with him, and I just started crying. Yeah. I had the same reaction to the song live. But what I would say is one thing I am so passionate about urgently telling people is, if there's some band that was incredibly meaningful to you in your life at any point and they're playing, do everything you can to go. Yeah. Because if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that life is fleeting and short, and we don't know what's going to happen. And for example, I don't know if Hum's ever going to play again or not. Maybe they'll play with the guy from Shiner. I wouldn't be surprised if they said it's over. But if they play, go see them. And absolutely. Or whatever band, Smashing Pumpkins. Any of the ones you've talked about that people are clearly just as passionate about on your TikTok.
I think that's a good point. It's a good point. And, here we are talking about Hum back in Champaign Urbana days, and I'm wishing so bad I'd seen them then. And even more so, during the pandemic, we got Inlet. And I think that's a good point. And I had the same visceral reaction to Disarm on the 2018 reunion tour. I sobbed like a baby. And it wasn't because of the connection to the song. I think I could, I was just transported back. It was like that scene in Ratatouille where he takes the bite and he's like all of a sudden back and he's a child. I just suddenly was like a young teenage boy learning to play that on an acoustic guitar. And I suddenly was like, I'm in my 40s now. Like, that's so long ago.
Exactly. That hit me with the little boy line.
Yeah,
I was
I
still
oh my God.
feel a connection to that boy I was.
I know. I still feel like him. I still feel like that mentally. I mean, that's the crazy thing. And people who listen to Waterproof Records who are our age, what we're talking about. If you're young, then you'll feel mentally that way for the rest of your life, at least as far as, like, I still feel like the same 17-year-old kid. Have I matured? Have I changed? Have I learned life lessons? Yes, but I still feel like I did when I was that age, and it's really hard to look in the mirror and realize, oh, I'm not that kid anymore.
And I think that's not an uncommon experience for people as they age. 85, 86-year-olds, they are shocked sometimes to look in the mirror because they still feel, they say that everybody has a particular age that they feel the closest to, that they went through.
Sure.
Some people will be like, I have an aunt who says that it's when she was 9. Like, she just feels that. And for me, it's 17, 18. Like, I am that guy.
Yeah.
But I have no hair and a beard, and I'm 42.
Yeah.
So, but the show thing, if you're young, soak in as much music as you can and see as much as you can now, no matter, as much as you can. Yeah. But if you're older, like, you're going to be tired the next day. And we do a good job of talking ourselves out of experiences as we get older.
Sure.
And especially with family and kids. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But for example, that show, when I saw Hum at the Double Door, was a midnight show. And I had a little one. I had a 2-year-old at the time. And I felt terrible the next day, but I'm so glad that I didn't go, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like, I just powered through and the music lifted me up. It's not like I was tired during the set. It was transporting and uplifting. So, and to this day, I'm still talking about it. So,
well, I know I can't keep you much longer. I know you had a heart out, but I was going to say, look, I love this show because we came in to talk about Hum's You'd Prefer an Astronaut, and it became so much more. And so I think that for people who listen, all of us can remember the time that we heard that album for the first time, heard Stars, heard these songs, and how much they influence artists. And what was so special about this is that the impact that Bryan St. Pierre had on you and your life. It was a very fitting tribute for an incredibly talented man that we lost way too soon, just a couple months ago. So the wound is still fresh. Yeah. But if anything, I hope that the members of Hum hear this show, they hear how much his talent meant to you and to me, and that what an impact that they've had on us. And honestly, I don't think this is the only time that we're going to talk about Hum. And I think that we should definitely revisit it. But
yeah, if you want to do like an album by album,
maybe we should just go album by album. But it's been really special. And before we wrap things up, I just wanted to see if there was anything else. I definitely want to plug, of course, Jazz for Lunch and Mr. Watson's Chickens. And what's the easiest way? Do they just Google them and find them that way?
Go to bookshop.org.
Bookshop.org, everybody.
Bookshop.org is a great alternative to Amazon that was started by a couple like veterans in the sort of indie book world. Yeah. And it's not one of these sort of passing things like so many websites have been. This is a really well done website. You can choose your local independent as like your shop. And when you buy on Bookshop, bookshop.org gives 10% to that independent bookshop. And it's not insignificant. I was talking to a bookshop owner last week who said they get significant checks when people do that. That's because awesome. The more people do it, they get 10% of the cost. So bookshop.org, and then you can search for Jazz for Lunch or Mr. Watson's Chickens, or maybe your local bookshop already has it.
Yeah, and then next year, keep an eye out for Skeleton Stomp. Skeleton
Stomp, yeah.
Skeleton Stomp. Well, Jarrett Dapier, thank you for taking your time today and joining me to talk about Hum. And it was awesome, dude. I mean,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have you back. So thanks for coming on this time around. And
we should probably talk about Sunny Day Real Estate.
Another really great one that we got a chance to see at U of I when we were there.
And then the drummer. The drummer of that was another one I was like, listen to this guy.
So good. So good. So many great bands.
Yeah.
And Jarrett, to this day, before we get out of here, I was going to say, you are very percussive, and talking about the bands today that you talked about, whenever I show my brother a new band that I'm listening to and it's very percussive, he goes, did Jarrett show you this one? My brother literally says that every time, because he knows my brother is a music nut like we are, but he can always hear, and you have bigger taste than that, of course.
Right.
But he can tell when an artist comes and it's got like the drums are really driving that song. He's like, this is a Jarrett reference, isn't it?
Like
William
it totally Golding is. in Sunny Day, he's got that driving, pounding force.
Yeah.
But he also is a little hyperactive.
Yeah.
Like Bryan St. Pierre, like Neil Peart.
Yeah.
Like John Stanier's a little more like reserved, but amazing. Yeah. But Jimmy Chamberlain, I mean, you're right. Yeah. There's a sound.
There's a Jarrett sound. And my brother says, that's a Jarrett band that you're sharing with me right now. So.
And the Block Party guy.
Yeah. Block Party guy.
Well, thank you. This was a treat.
This was awesome. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. See you next time on Waterproof Records.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna
Waterproof Records.